Good lord, this game is mercilessly difficult. And it's also one of the best designed games I've ever played. If you've heard people tell you how good this game is, it's true. It's also no exaggeration how difficult this game is, so it's definitely not a game for everyone. I think if you're a seasoned gamer who's up for a challenge and you approach this game with patience and an open mind, you'll be able to discover the fun in building your character, experimenting with the game's systems, exploring the game's masterfully designed levels, and discovering this game's hidden lore. This game simultaneously does the best and worst job teaching mechanics I've seen in a video game recently. The Northern Undead Asylum, where you begin the game, serves as the game's sort of tutorial. It teaches you how to move your character, to read messages on the floor that teach you how to play the game. It teaches you that shiny things and bonfires are good. It teaches you how to defend with a shield by forcing you to walk down a narrow corridor with a guy on the far end shooting arrows at you. The only way you'll be able to make it is by learning to use the shield. It then throws a fairly difficult boss at you, teaching you that Dark Souls will be hard, and that running away is a valid option, and is sometimes the best one. You eventually have to kill the boss to complete the tutorial, but if you manage to scramble across the boss room before he kills you, a better weapon can be found, and the game also gives you some hints on how to deal more damage. The tutorial also teaches you what is probably Dark Souls' most important lesson, which is that you cannot hack and slash your way through this game. You must pay attention to the enemy attack animations, learn their tells, and understand when it's safe to attack them. It's an excellent tutorial for the game, and teaches you all of Dark Souls' basic mechanics. But it doesn't address or teach its more complex mechanics at all. It's also sometimes easy to be overwhelmed by the giant spreadsheet of statistics that's presented to you on the player stats page, which isn't really explained that well. Dark Souls is a game that expects its players to learn its more complicated systems by experimentation, or by trial and error. Or just Google everything, which is probably what most players do. After completing the tutorial level, Dark Souls opens up quite a bit, and becomes very non-linear for the rest of the game. You can take any path in any order you want. Some paths are easier and intended to be taken first, and some paths are harder and intended to be taken later in the game. Some paths are completely optional and never required to finish the game, but you don't know which paths are which until you take them. Trial and error is another one of the design themes found in Dark Souls. Yes, it's frustrating at times, but the joy of exploring and discovering new paths or secrets offsets the frustration of accidentally taking a path intended for later in the game and getting your butt kicked. You can level up your character by spending the souls of the enemies you've killed on upgrades while at a bonfire. If you die, you lose all of your accumulated souls, so you're encouraged to spend them often. Mercifully, if you can make it back to where you died, you can recover your lost souls. But dying twice in a row without a recovery will see your unspent souls lost forever. It creates a sort of system where even where you're dying over and over again, you feel like you're still making progress, both through leveling up and also learning from your deaths, memorizing the enemy patterns and remembering level layouts. Progress in Dark Souls can be marked by killing bosses or discovering shortcuts that lead back to previously explored areas in the game, giving the game a bit of a Metroidvania feel. You'll find that a lot of the weapons and armor in Dark Souls are not really statistically better or worse, they're just different. Some weapons may have comparable stats, but differing swing arcs or varying ranges. It's not so much of finding the best weapons and armor in Dark Souls, but finding the ones that suit your playstyle and your character build. There's also an ever-present multiplayer component to Dark Souls. You basically always play the game online, seeing ghostly glimpses of other players and reading the sometimes helpful, sometimes trolling messages left by them. You can also optionally opt in to a cooperative multiplayer component to get assistance from another player to take down a difficult boss. The thing is, when you opt into the cooperative multiplayer, it also makes you susceptible to the hostile PvP invasions from other players. It's a really cool mechanical trade-off and another really smart design decision. The story of Dark Souls is communicated very unconventionally. Often NPCs will reveal very little about themselves or the world around them, so most of the narrative is communicated through environmental storytelling, and also reading the item descriptions on new things you picked up. Don't be mistaken, there really is a lot of lore in Dark Souls, it's just hard to find and very open-ended. The story purposely poses a lot of interesting unanswered questions, and leaves it up to the player to fill in the gaps with their own imagination and interpretations of what happened. Dark Souls is probably the hardest game I've ever completed. It's also one of the best designed games I've played recently. If you can approach this game with a certain amount of patience and endurance, you'll really enjoy it. The feeling of finally killing that boss you've been stuck on is a feeling of reward that's unmatched in any other game. Even the little rewarding moments of finding a new weapon or discovering a new shortcut or learning something new about the game's mechanics you didn't know before feels awesome. It's not for everyone, but the people who it is for will find Dark Souls very enjoyable.